Today's episode is brought to you by my good friend Andy Bovender, the founder of the Bovender team out of the Carolinas. Now, him and his team have helped more than 5,000 families. So if you have somebody who's been thinking about making a move to or from that area, they are the team to call. Today's conversation with Andrea Gordon it's really fun, and it's been a pleasure to chat with her. We talk about life, business, and her book that she's currently working on. As well, I wanted to share more about the Inner Circle group. It's a special group that is primarily made up of past guests, and we sit down 2 times a month and we talk about best practices, ways to improve our business and ultimately grow. And the wonderful byproduct are those referrals. As always, I'm your host and San Francisco referral partner, Shawn Kunkler. Thank you for joining me today. I'm thrilled to sit down with you again.
Thank you, Shawn. I really appreciate it. So what do you want to talk about today on your fabulous podcast?
A great question. So it's funny, I always do, usually before we record, it's anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. And I always do a pre-conversation and kind of feel the person out and talk about directions.
Mm-hmm.
With you, we're just literally hitting record. So we're flying by the seat of our pants. Here we go. But I was on your podcast and I had such an enjoyable time, and it flowed so nicely that I'm confident that this too will do the same.
Very, very nice. Is that some sort of altar you have in back of you?
It's my office,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not an altar, but that is a skull that's over my shoulder.
That's funny.
It kind of reminds me on those days when I'm stressed to the gills that this is short, and so look for the blessing within all the craziness.
Yeah, I just had a podcast myself I have a realizations podcast, which some of your listeners may have heard of before.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had a really interesting one where a guy was wrongfully accused and went to jail for 5 years. Got out after 2 years for good behavior. And he was absolutely bankrupted by the experience. He was a flipper in San Diego.
Rough.
And he talked about how it was, in retrospect, it was the best thing that ever happened to him, because he came out of prison absolutely determined to clear his name, but also absolutely determined to do incredibly well. That he, learned an unfortunate lesson about trusting people, some business partners that were nefarious, and that he had moved forward in his business and had gone from literally zero to a $15 million company in the space of 5 years.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Is that person local?
No, he's in San Diego, and he also works in San Antonio and one other place that I can't remember. So, but the gist of it was redemption and forgiveness, and really getting to the point in life where, yes, you trust your gut, but you also verify everything.
Trust but verify.
Yeah, exactly. And I was interested in that because we're in such a very strange and corrupt and weird time. As you and I are speaking here today, the stock market has just dropped over 5,000 points.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. And, there's not a lot of trust going on with what's going on with the government for me in particular. I'm in Berkeley, California, so I may be a little different than some of your viewers. I don't know where the majority of them are, but being a left-leaning liberal Democrat and proud of it, and I'm proud of my country and in love with my country and in love with the freedom we have in our country, I'm very worried right now for everything. And that said, it just provokes me to work that much harder on the things that really matter to me, because all of our voices need to be heard. All of us need to be out there proclaiming our freedom, proclaiming our success, proclaiming our capability as much as humanly possible, so that these bastards don't win.
Have you been completely neglecting your newsletter, social media, or any of your outbound marketing? If so, I have a solution for you. With little to no commitment, a virtual assistant can jump in and help you in those areas you just don't have the time for. For more information about hiring a virtual assistant, go ahead and follow the link in the description below. Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. I mean, I think, regardless of which camp you're in, it's kind of it's hard to be informed without getting sucked into it in a way that almost becomes detrimental to your life.
Absolutely.
It's hard. I mean,
Absolutely.
as it relates to real estate, I mean, with us, our industry is directly hinged in multiple ways as to what the bigger decisions are, but it's also very much hinged on how the economy is performing and what the interest
Exactly.
rates are, and
Supply
more so
chains.
than
Yeah.
other industries.
Yeah.
So it is tough, and we do have to be informed.
Yeah. And so it's not a thing of putting your head in the sand and not listening to the news because you got
Correct.
to. It's being smart about things like, are you really going to recommend a massive kitchen remodel to somebody in the middle
Right.
of the tariffs? Are you
Right.
really going to
Right.
recommend that they hold their property off the market until next year, or
Yeah.
should they get on the market now? These are decisions that are actually based in reality and the news
Correct.
that we're listening to. Um, so yeah, I was very inspired in a lot of ways by the guy that I
Mm.
talked to, because he went from literally the pit of nothing to
Yeah.
pulling himself up by his bootstraps and doing very, very well, to the point where his children, he has a 15-year-old daughter and son,
Mm.
um, and went 15 and 16, I believe, and they actually are doing a show that is going to show up on. It was picked up by Warner Brothers, called Kids Flipping, and the gist of it
Wow.
the gist of it is young people becoming financially aware early in life. When I was their
Wild.
age, I was just, doing what kids do. And, it took me until I was almost 30 before I stopped like hanging out on the beach and writing bad poetry. So, so it's kind of amazing to me to think that kids have to think like that, but they do. They
Yeah.
absolutely do. Um,
That's wild that teenagers are thinking about. I mean, I was like riding motorcycles and smoking cigarettes in
yes,
my
you were.
teens. Like it was not. It was.
I can tell you were a bad boy for sure.
It caused a little bit of trouble. That's for sure. But it was fun and good
Yeah,
natured.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. So I'm also I'm very grateful to Compass for being the incredible, um, very forward-facing company that it is, and thoughtful company that it is. I mean, a lot of people don't realize how much thought goes into everything that
Mm,
happens in our industry, and our industry has been under siege in the recent past with the NAR DOJ lawsuits, the commission lawsuits, the hypocrisy of that. That's why I started my podcast Realizations, to basically combat that, because I realized
interesting.
that what was happening was because the American public is not educated as to what it is we do.
Yeah.
They don't appreciate us. They don't respect us. They don't find it to be a meaningful profession. And so my goal in my podcast is to elevate people's perception of realtors. Um, and that's kind of what I do all across the board in terms of the class that I'm teaching now, in Real
Nice.
Estate Mastery. Um,
What is that class?
it's called Realizations, just like my podcast.
Kidding. Love it. Hey, real estate pros, be honest. You know you should be using video, but maybe you feel awkward, don't have the time, or just aren't seeing the results. This is where Kim Rittberg's Video Bootcamp comes in. This live coaching program helps agents create high quality videos quickly and confidently, resulting in leads and clients. Her students have seen results. One landed 3 new clients directly from social media, and others brought in millions of dollars in closed sales. Spots are limited, and to apply now, follow the link in the description below.
And the class is in 6 parts, and
Wow.
that form the 6 chapters of the book. The first one is all about figuring out who you are as a realtor.
Hmm.
Who is your best fit customer? How
Yeah.
do you ascertain that? How do you brand yourself? How do you create a meaningful, authentic existence for yourself as a realtor? Because, there are people that appreciate me coming from my theater background, what have you. There are people that are very dry, tech people, engineers, whatever. I can work with them. I can work with anybody. But when you are looking at who you are, there's some basic questions to ask yourself. Just like an actor creating a role in a play,
Yeah.
will ask themselves, who am I? Where am I? What do I want? What am I going to do to get what I want? What are the obstacles facing me in getting what I want? And how do I overcome them? So you ask yourself those questions around who you are.
Mm.
And then you also ask yourself those questions about your best fit customer. Who are they?
Yeah.
What do they want? What are they going to do to get what they want? What are the obstacles facing them to get what they want? And you create a Venn diagram and put it all together and figure out, okay, well, this is where I should market and this is how I should market, because this is where I'm going to find the people that are going to relate the best to me, who are going to create a lasting relationship with me that's meaningful for both of us. Because life is short, and if you don't if you don't fill it with meaning, then what's the point?
Yeah. It's interesting. I did something very similar with my career as I developed, and I actually used it to figure out, can I work well with this person? Are we going to be a good fit? Meaning, is it going to be a good experience from the beginning, middle, and end for them and for me? And if it's not, I should probably just introduce them to an agent who would be a better fit. And that was very freeing to figure out identify myself, but also identify them. So it sounds like a really powerful course that you're teaching.
Yeah, and recognizing that having the power to say no to somebody is very freeing in and of itself.
So freeing.
And the other part of it is you can make adjustments. You can say to yourself, yeah, I don't really relate that well to this person, but they want to buy a $4 million house. I know exactly what to get them. I can put up with whatever quirks it is that I am not copacetic with, and I can get there. But if you make that choice, and if you're functioning from a place of knowledge and understanding rather than just being a bumper car and going
Good
where
word.
So that's the first chapter in all of it. Then branding is the next step in all of that. What colors do you like? What music appeals to you? What ads irritate you? What ads do you sort of get involved with? What do you think is important to say about yourself and your work? What is it that defines you out in the world? How do you reach the people that would appreciate how you are defined in the world? So I go into that a lot about online advertisement, branding, what have you. Of course, utilizing when I'm working with Compass people, thinking about the Compass tools that we have. But with other people, you can work within the framework of the tools that they have available to them too. And so once you come up with that brand that can work for you, then you think about things like, okay, look at my website. What should my website look like? Do I like purple? Is that the color I'm going to make my website? Do I like a bold font? Do I like a curly Q font? What is it that appeals to me, that expresses me out into the world through the marketing that I do? So you hit it on all levels. Yeah. And then the next class was about where you go to market in relationship to this new branding. Whether you're going to farm, whether you're going to work expires, whether you're going to, all the really basic stuff, especially, by the way, when the economy goes down, you have to go back to basics. You can't.
Always. Always.
I'm not going to, you can't just blindly call people because of the do not call list, but there are ways to reach people that you can figure out. And there, in all the old school stuff about farming, door knocking your neighborhood if you want to, but not leaving anything in mailboxes, marketing to a particular sector, just sold cards, but actually telling a story that's meaningful as opposed to something stupid. Don't send somebody a recipe. Nobody gives a damn. They're going to make their grandma's recipe. They're not going to make your recipe.
Yeah, my favorite is to remind people when to turn their clocks back. At this point, all of our clocks just change.
I know, I know. Yeah, it's funny. But that's what people used to do. There used to be like these magazines where your picture would be splayed out on it, and then they'd have recipes inside, or talk about things that are completely irrelevant to the people you're reaching.
Although, let me just caveat this one really quick. If so, my one of my dear friends, his husband was a food blog writer.
Hmm.
And so they actually, but this was their brand, so I get it. It's like totally different.
That's meaningful.
But yeah, and that's the story. And so what they did was they actually made pizza one day and hired a photographer to take photos, and then his husband wrote the whole recipe, but in story format, and then they made it into a cookbook.
Oh, cool.
And so, but that's like, I get it. It's not what you're saying that
Right.
other people are doing. It's like this whole experience in story.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was really cool and special because it kind of goes back to that early part. It really matches who that individual is and then who their clients are. And then you're kind of scratching that record and coming in with a story.
Right. And for a long time now, I used to work in advertising, and back when I first started working in advertising, you could just go, here's my can of beans,
Yeah.
right? And now everybody wants a story around it. Like there was a
Yeah.
very famous ad campaign around Tiffany where they showed the whole engagement and the blue box and all of that stuff. And that really captured people's imagination. And so
Yeah.
everything from basically I don't know, you look to me like a millennial. Are you a millennial?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm 50 this year, so
Yeah.
I'm Gen X.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, um,
I'm solid Gen X.
you turned red.
I'm the last of the feral children.
There you go.
Mm.
Well, Gen X was a great generation actually, because you guys will wield hammers and actually paint things, whereas millennials are like, oh my god, the house is pink, I can't buy it. So so in any case, these stories that get told in advertising that's the way people
Yeah.
are connecting, and I actually think it's really good because it basically forces people into a sense of community around pretty much
Sure.
everything. I mean,
Everything,
yeah,
everything is the
yeah,
story, is the narrative we're
yeah.
subscribing to, and we subscribe to ones that resonate with us. Yeah.
Exactly. And unfortunately, as our news system has gotten fractured, we are set up to
Click.
all be sort of, getting siloed off into different areas. And it really defines you, really defines everything.
Yeah.
You have to play into that as somebody. I mean, realtors are basically marketers. That's what we do.
We're marketers that sell real estate,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Once you get into the transaction, it's a whole other thing. But up until the point when you get into the transaction, you are marketing something.
Mhm.
And so those siloed spaces where people end up going, you have to understand them, because if you don't understand them, you're never going to connect with the proper audience for the proper property.
Correct.
So when I have a house, like a long time ago, I had a house that was right near the Chinese American school in Alameda.
Mhm.
You're an Alamedian, aren't you?
I am. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm on the island.
Okay. Well, I inveigled to get a copy of the teacher and student list from that school. And I mailed directly to them because the house that I had was like a block away from it. And the buyer came straight out of that. And this is like way pre Compass, way pre everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and so you target market, and you target market really, really specifically, because that's how you're going to economically market your things.
Yeah.
Scattershot doesn't work anymore. You have to figure out where to point the information.
What's interesting about that is I've had a couple like high level marketers on,
Mhm.
and the more specific your marketing is,
Mhm.
especially regionally, it's actually easier.
Mhm.
It's when you're trying to scattershot the US, it
Yeah.
becomes very hard because
Yeah.
it's so varying. It's kind of like saying, well, what's the weather in the US today? You're like, well, where?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and if you even like chunk it down to San Francisco, 7x7, there's microclimates. Like literally one side of the city is a different temperature than the other.
Exactly. Exactly. And same thing with, Oakland and Berkeley and Alameda. I mean, in Alameda, you have the West End, you have the East End, you have, the Bay Farm Island. They're all very, very, very different places. My neighborhoods are similar where I am, and so actually, that's the difference. I mean, when you think about it, if you go to a major company like Zillow or Trulia, they're so everywhere that they're nowhere. And for and homes.com, I always love it when I'm showing the Compass Insights to my sellers, where they show where did people come from, how many views did you get, what instrument were they, what device were they looking at it from. If you go to like homes.com, every one of my listings has been viewed by like 1 million people. It doesn't do any good. That doesn't do good. If somebody is in Thailand looking at my listing, unless they're an actual buyer, it really doesn't matter at all. What you need is specificity in absolutely everything. Yeah. So getting back to the book, I talk about all of that stuff, and then I got into horror stories.
I'm sure there's a lot.
Oh, it was so much fun to hear everybody going on and on and on about the different insane situations that we as realtors can get into.
Wild.
And there are so many of them. Like that poor guy that I was talking about at the beginning of our conversation, he got set up by major scammers to rent out properties under their name when they didn't actually even own the properties, and he did not know it, because they were using false identities and everything was perfect. Everything was faked so perfectly that he rented these spaces out, collected money, sent it to those guys. And then when the lawsuit came into play, he was convicted because they assumed he had to have been part of their scam when he was not. Yeah. So
crazy.
So that's a horror story in and of itself. I mean, what a horrible thing to happen to somebody. Or, there were so many. I told my story about leaving my purse on the table in San Francisco, going downstairs to check something out by the front door. The door closed behind me. I was on the front porch, and there was a locked gate in front of the front door of the gate. My purse had my phone in it, and all the keys to the house.
Oh no!
And I got stuck there for 4 hours before somebody else came along.
Holy crap! Those
awful. Are the kinds of things that can happen to us.
Actually, you just gave me like a nightmare flashback. I was at open house, and my teeth were floating, and like I was pacing. I had to go to the restroom so bad. And so I was like, all right, no one's here. I'm going to run in super quick, run back out. Ran in, used it, turned around, the door wouldn't open. And it was totally jammed. The handle was like, there's an old Victorian house. I could not get the door to open. And I was like a good 5 minutes of me in the bathroom trying to jiggle this stupid handle to get it to open.
I actually had something similar happen, except it was at an open house where a little girl went into a bathroom, locked the door behind her, and then couldn't figure out how to get out.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Just like stress for no reason.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. And there things like, those are the doofy things that happen to us. There's many more serious things that happen to us.
Yeah. There's malicious. I've had people just turn the stove on.
Yeah. Oh,
for no reason.
During the economic downturn, I had an incredible, there's a place called Ruby Hill in Pleasanton, which is a very, very wealthy enclave. Different football stars live there, what have you. And I had a multi-million-dollar foreclosure that was given to me by, I think it was Wachovia Bank. I can't remember who it was during the downturn. Anyway,
wow.
The guy who had lost the house was the contractor for the house. He put Limburger cheese in the refrigerator and turned the refrigerator off. He poured acid on the stove tops. He poured concrete down all of the drains.
That is a nightmare. I've heard of that happening to a couple of people, and that's like a crazy nightmare.
Yeah, it was pretty awful. And the bank wasn't willing to do anything about any of it. So somebody got a bargain and a half, but they had to rip out all the plumbing and redo all the appliances and
Yeah.
what have you. Another time, I handled a foreclosure for the same bank. It was an REO, I should say. Yeah, that was an REO, by the way, not a foreclosure, but
Mm.
and real estate owned by the bank. When they take back a house in foreclosure, it goes to being an REO. This gentleman who had fixed this house up in Trestle Glen area of Oakland, I got to the house and he was stealing the stove. He was stealing a wood stove and he was taking it out the front door. And I was like, hey, wait a minute, what are you doing? He goes, this is my stove. And I said, well, actually, it isn't, unfortunately. I'm very, very sorry, but please put it back. And he goes, I'm going to throw this at you. So he starts to shove the stove down the front stairs.
Holy jeez.
And I went running, of course, and I ran to my car and I called my manager at the REO manager and said, what should I do? And she goes, call the police and get the hell out of there.
Yeah, we're not security guards.
Exactly. You're not supposed to put your life at stake over real estate.
Nope. Yeah, that's outside of my pay grade.
Yeah.
I'm
But
not risking my life.
and jokes aside, that's there are people, those were people in a world of hurt, obviously.
Yeah.
And and we're about, given what's going on in the economy right now, we may see some of that again. And you have to prepare yourself and figure out how to respond to it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think, just like so my background prior to getting into real estate is I ran martial arts schools. So, and I taught a lot of classes and a lot of self-defense classes and women specific self-defense classes. And I mean, I think open houses are terrifying.
yeah,
And
it can be really scary.
I genuinely think there should be more education around that of people should just be prepared and just little stuff of like, even when I host an open house and I know how to fight, I know how to move, is I will always strategically like stand on the other side of the dining room table. So if you want to get to me, you have to go around the table, which gives me an option.
Yeah.
I can move. It's like you can never really come directly to me.
Mm-hmm.
And just little stuff like I'll stand near an exit. I'll make sure doors are open and just being mindful on not paranoid, but just mindful, aware of
Yeah.
what's happening.
Or if you're a single woman and you have a listing, like very frequently, some of my listings are way out in the hell of nowhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You should not be alone at an open house.
Correct.
You absolutely shouldn't. If you go to an open house and you are by yourself, all kinds of things can happen. A friend of mine, somebody tried to attack her. He stole her purse. She locked herself in the bathroom.
Smart.
Once again, didn't have her phone. Her husband came looking for her hours later because she was so scared she wouldn't leave the bathroom, even though she had heard the person leave. But she was very, very lucky.
Yeah.
When I started in the business, realtors would like get in a car with a stranger. You would just go out, and it was only a few years later that I started having people come into the office and meet them first.
Yeah.
This is all pre-Zoom, pretty much just, cell phones were the size of a shoe. It was a little
True.
different.
Yeah.
But the point being, you have to think about your safety as a realtor too, and that came up in that discussion about horror stories, because there are a lot of them. There are a lot of realtors are easy pickings as far as we dress well, we have expensive jewelry, we probably have an expensive car. There's a lot about looking whatever the house is. So if you're going to a $3 million house, you're going to be wearing something that's very, very nice and what have you. But at the same time, you're a sitting duck.
Correct.
I'm not a big fan of open houses in a lot of ways anyway. I sort of wish that realtors would just show houses and there wouldn't be open houses, because basically you've got a line of signs taking somebody who knows nothing about your property to get them there. Whereas everybody has GPS at this time.
Yeah.
Why do you have to do that? Well, you get your name out there.
Well, and it kind of goes back to your point earlier about these signs are just attracting buyers, maybe neighbors. Let me rephrase it. It's just attracting people
Right.
generically.
Right.
Whereas when you're strategically marketing, you're either going after predisposed sellers or predisposed buyers.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so, I mean, the city is pretty obviously busy and there's a lot going on, and 90%, this actual NAR stat, I think it's 97% of all homes are first discovered online,
Yeah.
meaning they're also going to find the open house there too. And
Yeah.
so I got to the point where I'd put a sign in front and I'd put a sign on each end of the block, and
And
that
that's
was
it.
it.
Yeah.
But I'm also, it's the density is there where I didn't need
Right.
to do anything more than that. But it also was supported with an online campaign, a marketing an email campaign. It was
Right.
backed into with all this entire series of things. So I wasn't trying to just get the people buying ice cream two
Right.
blocks over who thought it would be cool to kind of see what the mystery property is.
Right, exactly. And I have a listing right now that I call Disneyland because it's um it's a 1908 mansion at 2049 10th Avenue. And every weekend it attracts like 35, 40 people. And but of those 35, 40 people, maybe one of them is an actual buyer
Yeah.
because it's a really, really cool property. It's only
Yeah.
had two owners in its history. I did this great Ken
Wow.
Burns style um, sort of documentary about it as its video. So
Oh, send it to me.
I had historical pictures. I had all kinds of cool factoids about it.
Yeah.
The first people that lived there had loaned their attic space to the symphony, so that so that people in the symphony rehearsed out of this house. The second set of people who bought it, one of them was Tom Hanks' drama teacher, and
Wow.
I know, isn't that cool?
That's so cool and random. I love that.
And the house itself is utterly gorgeous. We were featured in the Chronicle and what have
Yeah.
you. That's another thing that I do. I go after press for things because
Always.
that
Yeah.
particular one was really, press worthy and people should
Yeah.
see that house. But it's more like a Disneyland ride than it is like a house sale. And
Yeah.
it's actually proving hard to sell because it's a
Interesting.
beautiful, beautiful house that needs everything.
Um,
So you walk in and you're like, oh my God, this place is phenomenal. And then you're like, oh, electrical, plumbing.
yeah. Yeah. And insurance is a little trickier to get. And then
Yes,
this is going to come up. And
right.
yeah, send me that video. I would absolutely love to see it. But even when you shared that, you didn't say, "Oh, it has four amazing walls and a roof." You told me the story,
Mhm.
the story, and you connected me to it with this story of Tom Hanks' drama teacher and the story of the
Yeah.
historical. That's you know those things that I retained about it were like
Well, yeah,
the
I mean, I think like that. But beyond that, it's just, that's part of the joy of our business
yeah.
is
I
that
love that part.
when we get to represent, and I'm incredibly fortunate. I trademarked the phrase interesting people, interesting houses. And so it
Mm,
has sort of borne out all the way through my career that a lot of the houses that I represent are architecturally significant and incredible. I mean, just incredible stuff. Like I have this log cabin house that also got featured in the Chronicle right now, 5950 Grizzly Peak. That house is a log cabin house on
wow.
an enormous lot. It has an actual really swimmable swimming pool. Like it's as long, it's like an Olympic sized pool. I mean, it's crazy. And it has an outbuilding, and these people built it very idiosyncratically for themselves.
Hmm.
The woman who designed it, she's a world famous jewelry designer, but what she designs are like these breastplate necklaces, and
Wow.
they're like works of art. I mean, I can only imagine like, J Lo or somebody. Actually, her clients are like Cher and people like that.
Yeah.
There's a book out on her work. Her work's been featured at the Metropolitan Museum and all over the place.
Amazing.
This house is just incredibly bespoke on every aspect of it. Like the kitchen, you go in and you're like, wow, it is really beautiful. Why is this more beautiful than other kitchens that have similar wood? Well, turns out that their friend, who's a woodworker in Bali, came over when they were building the house and built all of their cabinets for them by hand. and they're exquisite. They're absolutely gorgeous. And it's worth it to go to the house just to look at the stupid cabinets in the kitchen. You know? And then there's like this incredible cathedral feeling to it, and it abuts open space. So the house is stellar. And if you're in the living room and you look through this one window, which is small, it's not a great big window, you have a perfectly framed view of the bridge.
Oh my goodness,
Like
how wonderful.
somebody thought to make that window. Now, they didn't make it that big. They made it that big. Why? Who knows? But there's art everywhere you go in that place.
Oh, that sounds
So,
like an
yeah.
just incredible space.
So when you are able to appreciate the things, as you have to love houses
Yeah.
to be a realtor. If you don't love houses, there's no reason to be doing this profession, really. If you think it's an easy way to make money, it's not. If you think that it's if you think that it's going to be something you can do in your spare time, it's not.
It's not.
So you have to make sure that you want to spend time with those kinds of things. And I happen to love, buildings. I think they're cool. I love how the form of a house in some ways affects the way people think. Like do you know that they did studies on people that live in circular houses, and a lot of them have mental issues.
Really?
Yeah, because you need parameters, you need boundaries, you need to feel like something isn't just continuous, or you get lost.
Interesting.
I know, isn't that it? I
That
found
is, yeah, I mean, it's very, the, yeah, like, I'm just thinking through, design is very emotional, and it evokes not like the radical emotions, but even just it gives context. Like
that.
having an empty room, you have no context of
Exactly.
actual depth or size. You put a chair in it, and now you have something for your eye to measure against.
Exactly.
And then you start, it's like, well, what color is the chair? What's the lighting of the chair? And it starts changing the dynamic. That's my favorite part is always when I go to a new property and I'm trying to figure out how to sell it, is I always spend time in the space just quiet by myself thinking about who would be the ideal buyer. And
Hmm.
then how do I obviously want to introduce it to everybody, but how do I make it speak to them on a level where they have to have it? And
Right.
then similar to what you're saying with these very unique properties, it's, well, why this property? Like,
Hmm.
why this building? Why this structure? Why this location? And you start pulling at those threads, and
Hmm.
then it backs into, well, what's the story here?
Hmm.
Um, and then once you start hooking onto that, it's people like that Disney home. People come to experience it. They come to see this thing because now it's so special and unique, and they probably won't ever have the opportunity to experience it ever again.
Right. And particularly a house like that where none of the woodwork has been painted. So all of the beautiful,
Wow.
incredible woodwork is present. Someone will jack this place up at some point. Like
Mhm.
I,
Always.
I had a Maybach a few years ago that was a complete wooden house. Like all the walls were wood, the ceilings were wood, the floors were wood. It was kind of dark and
Yeah.
dingy in a lot of ways going in, and felt small and a little claustrophobic. Um, but the person who bought it painted the wood. And I didn't have the listing until I had seen it when it was on the market before the person bought it. And then
Yeah.
I got the listing afterwards, and I almost cried walking into the.
I know wood is such an interesting, wood is so tricky.
Yeah.
Like it's just a tricky thing because it's dark and then dark makes a room feel smaller.
Hmm.
Or if it's like a redwood, it's not in fashion right now. So then it's like it gets overlooked because it's not stylish. So then there's always this like duality with
Yeah.
keeping
I'm
changing.
kind of a purist. I like, for example, the house at 2049 10th that I told you the story about.
Yeah,
I invited the Oakland Heritage Alliance for a party there. That's,
amazing.
you
Smart
know,
play.
Well, it was great. I mean, they were all people that knew the whole history of the house, and they had it on different tours. And another thing that's super great about that house is that the whoever buys it, the beneficiary of the estate is the White Elephant Sale, which benefits the Oakland Museum.
Oh, wow.
So it's super
Oh, my
cool.
goodness. That's
Yeah,
cool.
it's super
That is
cool.
really cool.
Yeah, what a nice thing that that man left his estate too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so when you are, looking at these places and you are in there and you're deciding who is the best fit customer for this particular place, you're also, it's helping you to create all of your marketing materials, all of the
100%.
angles for the photographer, who the stager is going to be, how you're going to refurbish it in different ways. If it's a, if it's a historically significant house, I never touch woodwork. Long time ago,
Agreed.
I had a Julia Morgan mansion in Alameda on the Gold Coast,
Wow.
and the sellers, they had tarted the whole place up like you would not believe, and painted the woodwork. And the people that were selling it, they decided that they would take all the paint off of the woodwork. And getting the paint off of that woodwork, we didn't do it throughout the whole house because it was way too expensive. Just in the living room, the family room, and the kitchen area, and the entry foyer, and the stairs, that was over $80,000
It's so
to
crazy.
take the paint off of the wood. We're not even talking about getting to the point where we reconditioned it.
I mean, it's so expensive
Yeah, it's
to,
expensive, and there's something about these incredible beautiful architectural homes that you want to stay true to the spirit of the person who created it as best you can, because part of it's like owning a Picasso. You're not going to put a layer of paint over a Picasso. You're going to enjoy it for what it is, right?
yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing that we have in our business, where we have to think on those levels all the time.
All the time. I mean, honestly though, that's like the marketing a property is probably where I find the most joy of the places that I find most joy, because it's just it's such a creative process to kind of work through it and try to figure out, because we do have such an influence on the final sale and how we're presenting it and how we're packaging it and how we're putting all these design elements together and creating this experience for somebody, creating a memorable moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, your own life is going to be the thing that really matters to you. So where you've taken joy in your profession is like the most important part of all of it. It really is. It's not about money particularly. Money is a wonderful thing. I love money, but money is a byproduct of doing a good job.
I agree.
It's
kind of, you can't do it for that. It's a bonus of a job well done.
Yeah.
Is really what it becomes in this profession. It's funny. I just remembered a time when I didn't muck up, but so I had a property that was struggling to sell. The clients basically left me the keys and left, and then we're in town after like a month of it not selling, and they walked in, and I got the phone call, and the woman had a meltdown that we had used a cow skin rug, the stager did, and she was vegan. And I was like, how was I supposed to know that? And how was the stager supposed to know that? So I got beyond an earful. It was pretty amazing.
Wow. Yeah,
And that was, in their eyes, that was the reason it didn't sell up to that point. I was like, no, it's a co-op, and it's in San Francisco, which is the hardest profile.
I know, and that's the other thing. It's like sometimes I'll have clients who want to rewrite all of my verbiage on a thing. And I will tell you this, first off, I'm a professional writer. I write the column for not one, but two magazines about real estate.
Oh my goodness. I didn't even know that. That's incredible.
Yeah. I work for Berkeley Hills Living and Montclair Living. And also I write plays. My plays are produced. My plays have been produced all over state and hopefully in New York this coming year.
Amazing. Congrats.
I take a lot of pride in and I have a degree in writing. So I take a lot of pride in my work, but
Yeah.
I'm not married to my writing. If they want to rewrite it, they can do that. But then what'll happen is they'll send you back this thing that's like the perfect panoramic views, walking distance to a store, the family room, perfect for entertaining loved ones. And nobody realizes that there are things like words you can't use. You can't say walk because it could be discriminatory against somebody. You can't say master bedroom suite. You say primary bedroom suite. You can't. So there's all this stuff that people don't realize goes into all of it, and you have to take all of that into account when you're putting your materials together. Some people are absolutely convinced that I should be marketing their house as a 3-bedroom rather than as a 2-bedroom, when the house is a 2-bedroom on the tax record. You walk in, it is a 2-bedroom. There's an enormous attic space, but it ain't a bedroom. And you'd have to, like, in the middle of the night, you'd have to go down, this gigantic spiral staircase.
Oh, geez.
And then walk through the house to get to a bathroom. And so it isn't. It is. So I compromised and said it's a 2+ bedroom, but you just don't, and they think that that's why the house is sitting a little bit. The house is not sitting a little bit because of that. The house is sitting a little bit because the market is a little wonky right now. And unless you're exactly the flavor of the week, it's a problem. And that's a thing. I don't know about you, but the other thing is that in the last couple of years, things have been staying on the market a lot longer. And sellers got very inured during like 2020 and 2021 and part of 2022 to their things selling in like 2 weeks. You could sell a paper bag in 2021.
You didn't even have to. Yeah. Like, you could have gotten everything wrong. Right. And that thing would have flown off the shelf with multiple bids.
Exactly. And, I personally sold $112 million of real estate in 2021.
Amazing.
And, that was an incredible year for me. I usually do more like 80. So it really, people don't take anything into account and don't realize of all the factors that come into everything that we're doing to get these properties sold and done. And then when you get into negotiation, like just right before I came on this podcast, I got a hysterical email from a client saying, I just read the reports. They're just terrible. They're buying a house. So I looked through them and went, oh, they're not terrible at all. This is all really normal stuff. And all the plumbing stuff that he mentions, like toilets needing to be tightened down, could be done by handyman. This is not like even plumber stuff,
This is like a couple
I'm going to have a Zoom call with them later today, but it's like people don't know how to read any of these things. I try to take the time to go through all of the disclosures with every single client, because otherwise they I don't know, catastrophize is the best way of describing it.
I agree. I mean, I think the challenging part, and this is where I know everybody's trying to disrupt the industry with AI, but the challenging part is context. Is without context, like that chair in a room, your eye doesn't know what to measure it against.
Exactly.
And so a loose bolt, it's like, it could mean the house is falling down, or it could mean that the toilet's a little wonky, and if you tighten it down, it's literally a 30-second repair with a wrench.
Right.
But without sometimes just a guidance of, like, I've seen this report a bazillion times, and I've seen this line item more than you can imagine.
Yeah.
Like, this is the next person to call, and this is how it's resolved. And I think sometimes clients, both sides, buyers and sellers, that's expertise.
Yeah.
That's you go to the dentist of, hey, like, this thing is jacked in my tooth, and they say, it's not a big deal. I fix this thing all the time. It'll take 2 minutes. And you're like, oh, okay. I now have context around this thing that I know nothing about.
Right. So, it's a problem. The biggest problem of all, though, is once again, you're Gen X. Gen Xers pick up hammers. They understand that things actually aren't perfect all the time.
Oh,
right?
I've had a toolbox since I was a
Yeah,
young
they
teen.
understand that there are questions to be asked. But
Yeah.
millennials, they don't have the experience with this stuff. So they think you can buy a car online by pressing a button, right? Carvana.
Yeah.
And they think that you can buy a house online by pressing a button. And they don't even know what the questions are to ask. Do you
That's the
remember,
tricky part.
do you remember travel agents?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I do
There's
remember
there's
back in
still
the,
a few left, but most of them are gone. And they were put out of business by Expedia.
yep.
And that travel agent could tell you where to get the very best frappe if you were traveling in Myanmar back in the day when you could, and it was called
Yeah.
Burma. That travel agent knew how to talk to the concierge at the Hotel Sacher in
Yeah.
Austria. That travel agent knew how to do those sorts of things. And there's a whole world of questions and specificity and beauty and grace that goes
Mhm.
when people with those knowledge bases are not in any way revered.
Yeah.
And the problem is that when they go, there's no one taking their place, and there's no one saying this is wrong. There's no one saying you could do this better. You could have a better time. You'd be more successful at what you do if you did this. This is
Yeah.
not the financially viable thing for you to do at this moment in your life. I tell people all the time not to buy houses.
I literally just talked a
Yeah.
doctor out of buying
Yeah.
just based on their timeline. Like they're like, "Oh, I start a new job in 3 months. We're going to move up there next month, and we want to buy a place." And I was like, "You don't even know the area, and you have a small child. Let's put you into a rental.
Exactly.
Try the neighborhood. I know it's disruptive. This is my recommendation. I will help you however you want to be helped. I will show you. We'll drive you around and show you the neighborhoods. But my recommendation would be this, and here's why."
Yeah. And so that is genuine help. That's the help of a trusted advisor.
Yeah.
But AI doesn't know those things. AI is just going to try and find that person a house.
Yeah, AI tries to just smash. It just bases it on data. It just smashes
Yeah.
well, it'll smash the wrong shape hole in the wrong shape box at this point.
It just doesn't know enough yet. I mean, for example, I
It's
mean,
getting there.
this is kind of wacky, but I'm actually getting my PhD right now, and I'm getting.
Do you like when do you sleep? What the heck? That is like that's crazy. Oh my gosh.
It's so cool. And Kevin Patzel, who's our president of Compass Northern California, was one of the people who wrote a letter of recommendation for me. I didn't realize it was
Amazing.
hard to get into graduate school until after I got in. And
So what are you going for?
transformative studies. I'm focusing
Okay.
on women and ageism and theater. You know that my background, I'm a
Yeah,
playwright and a director, and so
that's
it's kind of going
fascinating.
back to my roots a little bit. And
Yeah.
I'm just as busy as I ever was, and I'm a lunatic, but I'm taking 2 classes a semester. So I will have my PhD by the time I'm 80. And,
Hey, you're one foot in front of the other. That's
exactly.
after all of these podcasts, that's the one thing that everybody does who's successful. Just
Yeah,
every day, one foot in
exactly.
front of the other.
Exactly. So
That's
the point,
amazing.
the point being, I had to do an annotated bibliography, and I didn't know where to even start or what to do.
Yeah.
So I asked AI to do an annotated bibliography for me, and it came up with this incredibly beautiful annotated bibliography. Everything was perfect. All the subject matter was right. All the different authors sounded so great, and the little Ibsen things were all perfect, and the citations and all that sort of stuff. And then I started looking up the books that it had looked up for me. None of them actually existed.
That is
So,
wild.
so I got mad and I asked AI, I said, none of these books exist. Why did you do this? And AI said to me, I wanted to please you.
Crazy.
Okay.
That's why.
Yeah. So AI is really scary. It will
Yeah.
tell you what you want to hear. AI is like the Fox News of information.
That is wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all news, honestly, is just
Well,
feeding.
it's all again. We're
It's
siloed.
siloed.
everywhere. I've been watching BBC because at least maybe
Yeah.
I get some sort of a outsider view that can give me some idea.
You know what my epiphany was with all news,
Mhm.
and it kind of was very disheartening, is the news outlet's goal is not to convey news. It's not to educate you. The news outlet's goal is to get you to click on the article. That's it. So they're that like the more, the bigger, the louder, the wilder.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's so it's sad, but both sides, they're just selling this like, it's like the extreme case scenario, and we're not getting easily getting access to nuance. And I think nuance is that's the important part. And it's
I remember as a child watching Walter Cronkite, and I don't. You're a little too young for that, but
yeah, I know
he
a
was
lot
he
about him, but I
one of
don't know
the
if I
great
watched
men
him.
of all time, and they used to deliver news without any bias whatsoever. They
Y-
used to
In,
actually just deliver news, and
yeah.
you could make your mind up. I remember my father. My father was a teacher at Cal Berkeley, and
Oh, amazing.
we would have cool people over for dinner when I was a little kid. My dad was very involved in Buddhism and a few other things,
Amazing.
and we had people at our table who were, my dad was a very very left leaning, he was actually really interested in communism and stuff back when I was a little kid,
Yeah.
and we would have people over that were actually Republicans who were smart and well versed, and there would be incredible interesting conversation
Yeah.
that went on back and forth between my father and whomever else was there. My mother too, she was quite brilliant, and that has gone. That
That
has
is
absolutely gone. You can't have a different opinion. I actually, there was this thing on Facebook the other day where somebody was talking about how somebody had proposed putting a sculpture of Biden and a sculpture of Obama, of Barack Hussein Obama. Whenever they use Hussein as the middle name, you know where they're going to come from politically.
there's a zap
And
coming.
yeah,
Yeah.
do you approve of this? And then all these people said, oh, they were lying, horrible nightmare people. And I was like, you are so disrespecting the office of the presidency by saying these things. These were our presidents. It doesn't matter what you think of them.
Mm.
Don't say these things about our president and our government and
Yeah.
our democracy. And all these people piled on me like as if I had said something wrong. It was kind of amazing. And I had not said one thing, yes, I'm a left-leaning liberal Democrat, but I had not said one thing other than you are disrespecting our government.
Yeah. I'm on the same page with you. I mean, I hate that, we won't even sit down and have a conversation with somebody who doesn't align with us.
Mhm.
It's like, you don't have to agree with them,
Mhm.
and you don't have to support it, but you can also have a conversation about it. And also, at the end of the day, it's you individuals' belief system as to who they voted for doesn't, it's not this automatic data point of their intelligence level, or this, if they're good or bad of a person.
Mhm.
It's like, maybe just, if we all just like take a beat and ask a question, like, say more about that, like, tell me more about that. Like,
Mhm.
I'm just, maybe I can understand you as a person and where you're coming from and why you're
If
viewing
our
it this
countries
way.
if our country is to be healed,
That's all it's going to take.
that's what it's going to take, and it's going to
Yeah.
take a lot. It's going to take a lot because the division is profound at this point, unfortunately.
I think that's, sadly, I think that's the game. I think it's,
It's
we
profitable
talk
for
about it
somebody.
with real estate, is with real estate, emotion drives emotion,
Hmm.
and nothing drives people to the polling booths more than emotion, and
Well,
anger
well,
is the driver.
look at Susan Crawford getting elected to the Supreme Court in Wisconsin, which I was very happy about.
Mm.
But that is an indication of where people's minds are. People are
Yeah.
angry, angry, angry. I think the next election is going to be wild.
I think they're just going to get more and more. Unfortunately, I think we're going to get more divided and more angry and
and
frustrated.
and why should it cost? I mean, they spent $80 million on a Supreme Court
Crazy.
election in Wisconsin.
I think they should put caps on
Oh,
all that stuff.
absolutely,
Like,
absolutely. No one should. There should be no super PACs. None of it should be allowed. It's
There,
like amazing to me.
yeah, I think that all the campaigning they should have, and it's both sides. You have a maximum established budget.
Mhm.
It's like all this stuff has gone so wild, and I not to go on a rant with this stuff, but it's also in some cases the laws governing themselves they vote on.
Yeah.
Crazy,
Oh yeah.
makes zero sense to me.
No, in Berkeley, you know how we have to get energy assessment,
Yeah.
ASO. Okay, it used to be called RICO, and a long time ago, the city of Berkeley had one inspector who inspected for RICO. He also did the work to fix the stuff, and then he also came out and assessed whether the repairs were good or not.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Okay,
That's brilliant.
so that's the same thing that we're talking about here. I mean, the level of corruption on that stuff is so profound. And, you know, you're talking about the presidential election. I just think that people have to engage phenomenally on the local
Local.
level,
Yeah,
because
get local.
the only thing that's going to that's the only thing that's going to save
Yeah.
us is if we get people that are actually, you know, thinking, and in the true sense of the word, not in the political sense of the word,
Yeah.
progressively for things. And realtors, by the way, get involved a lot
Yeah.
in the politics, or we should be involved a lot. You know, things like
And
sewer lateral ordinances, or you know, the fact that Governor Newsom has made every single plot of land in California a zone for 4 units at this point. You know about that, right?
I did not. I know they were pushing for it, and then they were also pushing for 4 units
Well,
and up
there
on
are
like on transit lines, which
there
is
are
both are terrible.
there are unintended consequences of those kinds of actions.
Yeah.
Like in our area, in you know, with the sewer lateral in Berkeley, nobody thought about the ramifications of making this a point of sale ordinance and what it would do.
I'm curious, what is because I've done a couple transactions and we had to do it, but what is the ramification? I'm just not educated
I'll
on it.
give you an example from Oakland. It's a better one.
Yeah.
Um, Say you're an elderly lady and you live in your house that you've lived in for 50 years up on the ridge in Sequoia Heights.
Mm.
And let's say that your sewer line is not 15 yards, but 300 yards from where it meets with the city line in the street. And now the new ordinance says that you're responsible for that city line all the way to where it meets with the city line in the middle of the street. Well,
Oh,
that's
geez.
that's a $30,000 or more sewer line. Okay, and let's say you're selling your house short, and you're that old lady, and let's say that your buyer has come and they're an FHA buyer and they're only putting 3% down. Neither party in that circumstance can afford to pay the point of sale ordinance. Okay, and then when they created that ordinance, they also exempted banks from having to have the lines certified. So the little old lady loses her house to foreclosure because the buyer can't afford to pay for the line. The bank takes the house back in foreclosure and is not responsible for the line because they've been exempted from it.
Wow,
And then they can put the house back on the market and somebody else can pay for the line.
and then they defer to the next person anyways.
Right.
That's
Who
terrible.
buys the house at a horrific discount because it's an REO. And the cycle continues where people lose their homes because of these kinds of things that people didn't think about. They did not ask a single plumber or a single realtor about the ramification of just going, hey, it's better for the city if the consumer pays for the line.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw allegedly in front of what I'm about to say, but
Okay.
allegedly they were deciding if they should have a vacancy tax on properties in the city. And allegedly they kicked all the homeowners out of the room and asked the renters.
Yeah, I could see that.
And
Berkeley
so
Berkeley never met anything that a renter could vote for that they didn't pass, pretty much. Yeah, and people don't realize that home ownership is the key to community in on every level.
yeah.
It
And,
really
and I
is.
mean, and that kind of goes back is to if you just have conversations with your neighbors and like
Yeah.
it's just Oh, we have differing views. Oh, I'm so curious. How did you arrive there? Like, and it's fine. You don't have to change their view. Just understand them and
Right.
just
But
find common ground.
there are places where they don't want to talk to the homeowner because the people who vote, by the way, for example, Berkeley, you have this incredible transitory population who are voting age, who are
Mm,
students, who
yeah.
rent. So every single time a rent bill comes up on any ballot, it passes because the students want, they want, better rent, or they want, more amenities, or they want this, that, or the other thing without, or take San Jose. They passed a law where the homeowner can no longer, or the landlord can no longer pass capital improvements along to the tenants. What
Oh
is
shoot, really?
what is the unintended consequence? If you just think for a minute, what is the unintended consequence of doing that? No landlord is going to renovate or upgrade or keep in good repair their properties because they cannot in any way, shape, or form actually benefit from it.
Ah, it's so
So you'll create slums. Just that's how the Bronx turned into the Bronx. Same thing in New York. Rent control everywhere it's been has actually been a blight, and people don't get it. And I understand the logic. I understand. Or in San Francisco, your Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. You
there's
know,
a few just unbelievably wacky things I
right.
saw, which was hilarious. Was it was a spoof ad, but it said Legos is making a new build your own home in San Francisco, and it comes with a 2-year waiting permit. Yeah,
But and you understand how these things happen. Like I was personally at the building and planning department in San Francisco when I was flipping a house, and I saw a man hand money over the counter, not at the cashiers.
I mean, just
So you
Google search
so,
San Francisco
yeah,
DBI FBI,
right.
and
So
crazy stuff
you
comes up.
you understand how these rules get put into play, but nobody sits down and actually talks with realtors,
Yeah.
architects. Don't talk with realtors. I mean, if if
Uh,
if if
that
architects would talk to realtors, there would not be a single shared driveway in our area. But they do them all the time, and people
all
hate
the
them.
time.
People hate them. It's
Yeah.
and there would have been a way to make it not that.
Yeah, a friend of mine. I felt horrible. I didn't help him on the transaction, but I still felt horrible. They bought a property, later had to do the sewer lateral. The sewer lateral, I don't think they would have known this unless they specific. I don't even know if they would have known this. But it wasn't in an area where sewer laterals are mandatory. But it ran under the neighbor's driveway,
Oh yeah,
so they had to pull up the driveway, and he had to obviously out of pocket for that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Total nightmare, like
Well,
financially.
if you go in Berkeley, some of the older, beautiful brown shingle homes that we're so famous for,
Yeah,
a lot of those, sewers. I mean, people didn't have bathrooms back when those houses were built. They had outhouses.
yeah.
If you found a house like I actually sold a house that was built at the turn of the century in Oakland, and there was a covered porch, and in the middle of the covered porch was a fully plumbed toilet. And I was like, what the hell? And one day I saw this incredibly elderly woman out she was literally putting her laundry on a line. She was like that.
Oh, I
And
love
I
that.
went out there and I was like, excuse me, ma'am, you look like you might have been here for a while. Can you tell me why these people have a fully plumbed toilet on their porch? And she was like, ugh, that was the first toilet in the whole area. And those people just put on airs.
That's amazing.
I know. And so, you find out the reasons why weird things like that happen.
Yeah.
I was answering something that you were saying about
Uh,
your
Sewer lateral
about the
craziness.
about the lines. Okay, so in a lot of the older homes in Berkeley, when they were building sewer lines, which was new, they would just they'd take like four houses and they'd have all of their lines meet and converge through somebody's yard, and then they'd go to a big line that was going out to the line in the street.
Yeah.
Right? I've had it happen like probably 15 times where when people go to do the sewer lateral, they actually have to disengage their line from the line that it was on and build a whole lateral line. I mean, it's because it wasn't done that way.
Yeah.
And, you know, in avoiding taxes and putting this actual consumer tax on people at a point of sale, they're making it very, very hard for people. It's already really, really hard for people. You know,
I,
if they would increase property taxes or just taxes, you know, sales tax, any other sort of tax, but they tend to dump it all on the homeowner. You
I
know,
agree.
our you know, I don't know what is your city transfer tax in San Francisco now?
I have to look at it offhand. I don't know offhand.
In Oakland and in Berkeley, it's $15 per thousand. Under I believe 1.6 or 1.5. Above it, it goes to 25.
A nice sliding scale. That's a wonderful surprise.
Yeah. So that's why you see so many. I think is it 1.5 or 1.6. Anyway, you see a lot of houses that get sold right at the $1,000 below that because people don't want to pay that extra tax.
Yeah, I've held closings for clients for tax purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're nearing the end of the year, and then their accountant will be like, "Actually, you should sell this next year."
Yeah.
And so you kind of, it's totally legal. You just stall the closing for a few days. But I think that's, to your point earlier, this is the nuance of AI where
it won't know any of these things.
Like it won't know. Like you have just got experience of like, I know we should explore this because I've seen this 1,000 other times.
I mean, I've done over 1,000 transactions. I'm going to know more than AI does about specific things that can happen. And also, I understand human nature, and I understand the fears people have. I understand how they function in a moment of impulse or what have you. And AI can't know any of that stuff. It doesn't understand any of that stuff. Well, we have had a really far-reaching conversation, and I have got to go.
Yeah, same. I literally just looked at the clock and I was like, "Wow, we went way over time."
Hopefully, you'll find something good in here that you can
really appreciate you, and I appreciate your time. This was very enjoyable. Thank you.
Oh, cool. Well, I think you're a doll. Thank you very, very much, and I hope our paths cross and we do a deal together
Soon. That's the goal.
All right, honey. Take care.
You too.
Bye.